Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, everybody. We are going to get into our topic this evening, and I am going to introduce our guest for today, a fantastic woman in school leadership. I have had the privilege of meeting her quite a while ago now, but she is the founder of the Young Black Teachers Network. And good evening, Kemi.
Hi.
It's so good to have you. Welcome to the late show, which is normally on a Wednesday, but it is on a Monday just for this week. So I hope no one's been confused. But it's so good to have you. How have you been?
I'm good, thank you. And thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. How have you found your bank holiday?
It's been fantastic. I just got back from Malta.
Oh, dreamy.
That's been good. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Oh, wish I could leave the country, but alas, cost of living. My budget just will not stretch that far right now.
I had to book this one very far in advance just so we could go. So I get that.
Amazing. Well, maybe I'll put Malta on my list of places to go. I've heard good things, so maybe in future. So today we are talking about women in school leadership, which of course is something you know very well because you are in school leadership. So would you just like to introduce yourself to our guests, tell us a little bit about you, what you currently do, and how long you've been teaching, and kind of just a synopsis of your teaching career up till now, should we say?
So my name is Kemi, and I'm currently an assistant head teacher in Senko. I'm also an ad hoc guest lecturer at UEL and an educational consultant. I'm also the founder of the Young Black Teachers Network, which I started in 2018, and I've been teaching it will be 10 years in September.
Wow.
So it's been a minute. And today I started off my career as a teaching assistant, trainee science teacher. I've worked in various schools. I've worked in mainstream schools, faith-based schools. I've worked in a private school in Dubai. I've worked in a pupil referral unit. And I currently work in a mainstream secondary school. So I've got some experience in different types of educational settings.
Amazing. And I know we're not in September yet, but I feel like I do need to say well done and congrats for making it to the 10-year mark, because as we know, lots of teachers leave within the first 5 years. So you've done double that. So yes, hats off to you, because as we all know, it is not an easy thing to do. So many people are leaving the profession and, we need good teachers. So I commend you highly for staying.
I appreciate that.
You're so welcome. So a few weeks ago, we had a show, or I did a show talking to men, male teachers, men in schools, men in leadership. And we were just talking about the shortage of men. And that was a really interesting show. And we got into some real statistics that I will go over again, just for our listeners that might not have heard those stats, and just anyone really that is curious. So in state-funded schools, there are around 386,000 women working, but only 124,000 men. Male teachers are more likely to work in secondary schools, which I find quite interesting. And you are a secondary school teacher, Kemi, so that will be interesting to hear a little bit more about. 35% of secondary school teachers are men, in comparison to only 14% in primary school. But, and this is the real crux of the show, despite these figures, men are still more likely than women to be in positions of school leadership. Now, I will say that the gap is closing, but there are still more men than women, which I just find really interesting, because we know that the education sector is dominated by women. So in your experience, growing up, when you were in school, do you remember having any male teachers? Did that have an impact on you, whether you did or didn't?
Yep, definitely. I do remember. I don't remember having a male teacher. No, actually, no. I had male teachers in primary school. And I also had male teachers in secondary school. My male teachers in primary school were great. In secondary school, uh, one wasn't, which kind of, I don't know. He made me feel as if I was going to fail one of my GCSEs,
Mm.
so I didn't really like that. But I did have my business studies teacher. He was a guy, and he was fantastic. He was amazing. But for him, I guess I don't know. As a black guy, the glass ceiling for him was middle management. It wasn't
Right.
anything above that, and it's quite interesting. Like these stats and figures you've given, I'm not surprised. We know that the
Mm.
education sector, as you have said, is dominated by women. However, when it comes to positions of leadership, especially senior leadership, that is male dominated. And to me, that doesn't make sense. And quite
Right.
frankly, it's mad. It doesn't make any sense to me. It shouldn't be that way, especially if it's mainly women who are working for, as TAs, as classroom teachers, support staff, at all levels, middle management, curriculum leaders, and so on. But then when it now comes to senior leadership, when we're trying to get to the top, there's that glass ceiling and it's male dominated. So how come we can do everything else, but for some reason we're not good enough to lead at that top level?
That's such a great point. And I've been racking my brains about it for a while and just trying to think why. Why is it that even though there are so many women in the workforce, it's so difficult for them to have these leadership positions? I don't know if you've got any theories, but I'm still like sitting with it and chewing it over because, like you said, it doesn't really make sense. So, because I'm wondering, is it a patriarchy thing? Is it that it's the same way in every other sector and it's not a unique situation to education? I'm not too sure. But do you have any theories as to why it could be?
I think you hit the nail on the head. You said it the first time about the whole patriarchy thing. That's exactly what it is because um, if you want to, in other sectors, right at the top, it's also male dominated. Yes, we have more women in leadership and senior leadership positions. However, in many other companies or industries, fields, sectors, whatever you want to call it, it is still male dominated. And I think we are kind of moving in the right direction, but I would love to see that change a lot quicker. I would
Mm.
hate for us to be having this conversation 25 to 30 years from now if I have a daughter and she's having these same conversations, and that means we haven't really moved quick enough. Um, it's it's funnily enough, it took me quite a while to get my first senior leadership position, and because of how long it took me, despite me trying to prove myself and show that I'm good enough, I've got this experience, I've done X, Y, and Z. Um, it was just very difficult to break through to that. But I know for some other people, for other men, it hasn't been the same story, it hasn't been the same situation. It's been quite quick and maybe a lot easier than it was for me. And it is quite frustrating, and sometimes it puts you off staying. Like you said earlier, people leave within the first 5 years, and by the grace of God, I've stayed here for almost 10 years. But I'm there have been times where I've definitely thought about leaving because of that glass ceiling of not, progressing into senior leadership.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that because I was actually going to ask you, how you got your role, and I think you did answer that um well. And actually, you did raise a point that I didn't consider, which is that, are the opportunities even there to enter senior leadership? Because I do feel like generally in secondary schools there are more avenues to get up the ranks essentially, whereas primary school it doesn't feel the same way. So I'm a primary school teacher, and you kind of have your class teacher, you might have your head of year or head of phase, so head of key stage 2 or whatever, and then after that it's assistant head, deputy, and then head. Really, so it's kind of like, where do you go? So I feel like in some cases there isn't the opportunity, but in secondary school you do have a bit more. You can be head of subjects, head of department, head of year, head of pastoral, whatever it might be. There are more paths. And I don't know about you, but would you say that when you got into teaching, have you always aspired to senior leadership? Is that something you've always wanted to do? And was the opportunity there for you to do that?
Well, those who like people who know me, I never wanted to become a teacher in the first place. That was never the my that was never the plan.
Mm.
So I think for me, I just knew that I couldn't stay stagnant in my career. When I did get into teaching and I understood the impact I had on my students and the difference I could make and I was making on a daily basis, staying where I wasn't enough for me.
Mm.
So I was definitely like that kind of, is it career chaser, like climber or career climber, whatever it was. I just knew that I wanted to be the best that I could be and climb the ladder.
Mm.
And it wasn't always easy, but I do believe, my personal opinion is that it's probably easier to progress in a secondary school in comparison to a primary school. So I understand where you're coming from, because I feel like there are more opportunities in secondary compared to primary, because schools are bigger. There are more, more positions that need to be filled. So I think it could be a little bit easier in that sense to progress in a secondary setting compared to a primary setting. And I do take my hat off to you, primary school teachers. It is not easy at all. It's not easy at all to teach, but to teach primary school children, I could never do it. That's not my calling.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for doing what you do. I think for me, it was definitely about progression and the lack of representation that I saw when it came to people who looked like me in middle and senior leadership positions. And it didn't sit well with me.
Mm.
I knew that, my parents have always instilled the value of education in me, and I didn't want it to be like I was settling. I've I had done a few years as a classroom teacher, as a science teacher, and great. Will I just stay there, or am I going for more? And I always strive to be the best that I can be. So I think that was my driving factor, my motivating factor to become a senior leader. And I think I kind of lost heart a bit when I went for about 5 or 6 interviews, and 2 schools actually said I interviewed perfectly. They were really impressed, but they're just going to advertise for someone else. So I don't know whether there was something wrong or they didn't want to tell me the truth. But, when you hear things like that, and if you ask for feedback and they don't give you feedback, you would question what was really wrong, what went wrong, that you wasn't given the opportunity to be a senior leader. And I kind of lost heart a bit, but I thought I had to keep on going. Like, the worst that someone can say is no. But if I just kept on going, eventually a door would open. And it did open finally. Because there are people who haven't been in education as long as I have, and they've been able to climb the ladder, in much less time than I have.
Yeah.
And it has been frustrating at times when I know everything that I've done, everything I've brought to the table, but clearly there was something, I don't know whether there was something missing or those schools were just not the right fit. But it was definitely hard to break through that glass ceiling to become a senior leader. And now that I am one, I'm the only Black person on senior leadership. So I feel like there's a certain type of pressure that I put on myself, maybe, and also that I feel comes with it, because, of course, as a senior leader, you have more responsibility. But then you're now the first Black person ever in the school to be a senior leader, and you don't want to mess up for the next person. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, so many interesting things in what you said there. But that last part about, I guess, just race in general, because it's one thing to be a woman in leadership, a woman trying to climb that ladder. We already know that there's some disparity between men and women in leadership across all sectors. But then to be a Black woman, that intersectionality that happens right there, it just adds a whole other dimension that I don't think people are aware of, unless you happen to be very close or part of that intersectionality, part of that group. And I remember hearing someone say, as a Black person, just generally, you're not allowed to have a bad day. because you do one thing because you're in a mood, or someone's done something to you and you respond and you react in a way that's perfectly human, that can be misconstrued or labeled, with some kind of stereotype. So I can only imagine, being in leadership, the weight, how heavy that weight must feel. Um, would you say, or can you think of any experiences you've been, where it's been challenging to be a Black woman in senior leadership?
Definitely. Every single day. But of course there are times where I'm just very happy to be in the classroom and teach, because that was the first thing I started doing. So just being in a classroom, getting away from all that responsibility and focusing on my students, that's fantastic. But I feel like when I'm out of the classroom and there's a million other things that need to be done, where you're line managing people, you're managing departments, dealing with various stakeholders, and external agencies. It's a lot. And I think one thing that you said is being mindful of how, if you react in a certain way compared to someone else, mine would be labeled differently. So I have to be very mindful. For example, if I'm speaking and I get cut off, and it's like, I know what I want to say when someone cuts me off, but I can't,
Yeah.
because it's like, you don't want to, you don't want that label or that
Yeah.
stereotype. So there's a certain way I have to say things and do things in order for myself not to get labeled in a certain way, but to still get my point across. And it is quite interesting, because I I don't feel like I've ever, although I'm very grateful to be in a senior leadership position and to have an impact on the lives of the students that I teach, but it is also quite stressful when you constantly have to think of how what you say, what you do, your actions, all these things can come across something that you might not even think anything of it, but other people are now watching, and you have to be very, very mindful of what you say and what you do. And of course, naturally, as professionals, we always have to be mindful. But being in that senior leadership position and, coming into a school where naturally, no matter what school you go into, your predecessor would have had, ways that they do things. Everyone, no matter who, no matter what school you're in, there's always a certain way that things were done. So when new leadership comes into play, people may be skeptical. People are trying to, get a feel for who you are, how you lead, how you manage, and rightly so. They don't know you, so they have to get to know you. They have to get to know your leadership style, and it's not always easy establishing who you are as a leader in a setting where you're brand new and you're trying to build those relationships, but you're still trying to get the work done. So I've been this year has been a lot of learning for me, a lot of learning, and I think it's the jump from middle leadership to senior leadership is not for the faint-hearted, and it's similar to like I'm sure some people can relate, but the jump from GCSE to A level is really big.
Oh yes.
That yeah. So my GCSEs told me that I was smart, I was gonna be great, and then my A levels humbled me. So it's like, okay, this is literally like the jump from MLT to SLT is similar to that. It reminds me of that, and I feel like I'm starting all over again. I feel like I'm learning, I'm unlearning, I'm being challenged in different ways that I've never been challenged before. I've gone from as a middle leader managing one department to now managing three. So, managing maybe 11 people as a middle leader to now managing over 20. So it's definitely different.
Wow. I'm just sitting here and taking notes because I've I've been weighing up for a while whether senior leadership is something I want to pursue or not. So this conversation is actually very insightful. But I
Can I
do,
just say though,
of
I would
course.
love for you to still consider pursuing senior leadership. And that's not just for the sake of doing it. I'm saying in your career, if you want to, like, if that's what your heart's desire is to progress, you don't know whose life you're going to impact at that level. When I first started my role, I had some year 11 girls come up to me and said, you're the first black senior leader we've ever seen in the school. And it's just seeing you here, you don't know the difference that has made. And I don't even teach these girls. I haven't done anything. Nothing I've done so far in my role had affected them directly. Yeah. But for them to say that, and it made a big difference. It made me think of my why. And it's not just to say, oh, just go into senior leadership because you're black. That's not the only reason. Like, of course, you need to have a passion for what you're doing and, what you set out to do. But you have no idea the difference you're making, even indirectly. And for me, I was talking earlier about the pressure and not wanting to mess up for the next black person that came along. But then those students came to me and spoke. And now I'm thinking, wow, I've now left an imprint on them. In their 5 years from year 7 to year 11, they haven't seen any black person on senior leadership. And now in their last year of this school, they're seeing that. So it's just those things, like it makes a big difference. And I think sometimes we forget the difference our presence alone can make.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
That's such a good point about representation, because we talk about it all the time, but I think we underestimate the impact of it. Because I remember primary school, I had a black woman as a deputy head, and then eventually we got a new head teacher, and we loved this head teacher. She was a white woman for the purposes of this conversation. And, we're all sad to see her go. But then I found out that we were having a black head teacher take over, and she was a woman as well. And I remember just thinking, wow, you could be a black woman and a head teacher? Oh my goodness, I've never seen this. And, I still remember her. I still remember both of them, their names and everything, all these years later. So it really does make such a huge impact, like you said. And when you spoke about the jump from middle leadership to senior leadership, is there anything you did in preparation? So did you do any national professional qualifications, any courses or studying? How did you prepare, and how would you encourage others to prepare that might want to do the same?
So I never did the NPQSL or anything like that. For me, I'll be totally honest. Number one, I did a lot of prayer. For me, I did a lot of prayer, and I spoke to a lot of people who were in senior leadership. I spoke to a lot of men and women, but more so women, to understand how they had found it over, the course of their career. I spoke to a lot of black women as well, especially those who had maybe also been the first in their school, because I could relate to, they could relate to me and I could relate to them. So I spoke to a lot of people. I got a lot of advice. I read a lot of different books. I didn't do any courses. The only thing that I did was my National Senko Award, which was what I did as a middle leader anyway. But I didn't do any like NPQSL. And the reason why, I just wanted to, I understand these qualifications are great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them at all. But for me, experience is the best teacher. And I guess I've always gone in head first. For example, even when I did my teacher training, I didn't go down the PGCE route. I went, via Schools Direct, where you're in the classroom from day one, and you have you have your classes and so on. So I think I've always gone down that route of just get the experience, be right there in the center at the forefront, and go in that way. In terms of preparing, I was very anxious, very, very anxious about becoming a senior leader. I was anxious about leading such a big team, going from had about 10 people that I was managing before, and now it's currently 23. So going from 10 to 23, that's more than double. And then everyone has different personalities, everyone has different ways of doing things. So I think I had to get to know my team as well, and to find out their strengths, what is it that they want to do, maybe areas that they like to specialize in. How can I advocate for them? How can I push forward for them so they know it's not just about the roles that they're playing within the team, but also about their personal and professional development. Because
Mm,
I started as a teaching assistant. That's how I started my career, but people have helped me to get to where I am today. So you never forget the fact that you was helped to get to where you are, so you also have to help others. I
absolutely.
think also part of my preparation was talking to my predecessor and getting to know her way of doing things. So if there's anything that worked really well that I could keep the same, I would do that. And if there's anything that I felt needed to be improved, then I would also do that. But if it's not broken, I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to add more to my workload or to my plate if it's running and working well.
Mm,
So I had to weigh up what is working, what can be improved, and how do we go about doing that.
mm. I love that the previous person was so willing to help you as well, because
Yeah,
not everybody is so gracious.
that's
You hear
true.
of teachers leaving schools and deleting all their planning. They
Oh,
take
wow.
everything off the drive.
I've never
And
done that.
oh no, of course you wouldn't. But believe me, I've seen it. I have taken over classes, and the previous teacher has just whoop, cleared the drive. I said,
Oh my
okay.
gosh.
So we're really going back to square one. So yes,
Oh
you are.
wow, that is actually crazy. I've literally left things in previous schools and just said, "Well, it's there. I guess if you
Yeah,
want it, you can use it." But wow, okay, that's. I mean, okay, yep, great.
and things happen. Things really do. But I want to talk about what you said with just having to manage a team, and I want to go back to this men and women um dialogue. Do you find that do you have different ways of managing your male staff and your female staff? And I ask this because I've worked under a male head teacher and a female head teacher. And I will just say now, I know some people are a bit funny with the terms male and female, and it should be men and women. But just for ease and for the purpose of this conversation, I will just use those terms. I hope no one gets offended. But I've worked under, head teachers of both genders, and I found their leadership styles very different. I've also found the ways they treat their men and women staff different as well. Um, and not badly, but just differently. Um, so yeah, is that something or when you were a teacher, have you worked under both genders and have you noticed the difference? And as a leader, is there a difference in your approach to the different genders in your school? I hope that's clear.
Yep, that is. So let me answer the first part of your question about my experience under two different types of leadership. So yes, I've worked under male and female leadership, and um, funnily enough, some males were great, some weren't so much. But the two female head teachers that I've worked under, they have been supportive in terms of like my development,
Mm,
in terms of understanding, how am I feeling about everything? How's everything going? What can they do to help or support? So that has been quite interesting. But I've had like a couple male head teachers who weren't supportive, who weren't great. But I've also had another one who he was definitely pushing for me to come and work in his school, to come and to become a Senko. As in, I wasn't even thinking about becoming a Senko. He was just like, do this, do that, da, da. So I think it depends on the person.
yeah.
I will say, for me, my own personal experience, um, the empathy that I get from the female teachers have been great in terms of, that understanding. And with the male teachers, it's been more, but it's black and white. There's no grey area.
Mm,
Apart from one who pushed me to go and do the Senko Award and so on. He was just like, he could see the grey area in a lot of places as well. But it was quite interesting. And when it comes to me as a leader, do I manage or lead my male staff differently to my female staff? No, I don't. I have high expectations for everyone, regardless of who you are, whether you're male or female. And I have those high expectations because I have the same high expectations of myself, and people who are senior to me have those same expectations of me. So whatever you do or don't do will reflect on me as your leader, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm still accountable to someone. So we all have to get this right. And if you
Yeah.
can't get it right, what do we need to do to get it right together as a team? That's how I operate. That's,
Mm.
I think, I do have very high expectations and standards, and that's not to put pressure on anyone, but that's just because if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well.
Yeah.
If I'm not going to do something, then I might as well not be here.
Mm.
If that's the attitude that people are going to have, then I want people who are doers, who want to problem solve, who want to find a way. Okay, if this is an issue, how can we solve it? If this is a problem, how can we solve it? How can we rectify the situation? What can we do to improve? I want people who use their initiative. And that is what is so great about having a team, especially a big team where people have different ideas, different experiences, who can bring their knowledge and their expertise and their strengths to the table. And I think that's what's important. So whether you're male or female, that doesn't matter to me. But what I do expect is for you to bring your best. Now, for me, I work in an all-girls school.
Mm.
So when it does come to managing males and females, of course, there may be certain conversations I may have with male TAs as well, in terms of like, when they're working with the girls, because we work where I work, we connect before we correct. That's one thing we go by. So of course, everyone has their things that they have dealt with, or like we kind of use trauma informed practice. And I would never want a female student to work with a male student if she's not comfortable, for example.
Mm.
I would never want anything to trigger a student that could cause them harm in any way, shape, or form. So if there's anything that I can do, of course, we have male TAs and male members of staff. But if there's anything I can do to kind of make that easier for my students and to ensure that the well-being of staff and students are put first, I do that.
Mm. We connect before we correct. I love that. I'm
Yeah.
stealing that just for my own self. Nothing to do with work, just as a principle. I really, really like that because, even if it comes to, I know you were talking about it in the context of a situation or an incident, but just relationally, the way we relate to other people, there are times where you might have to reprimand somebody for something, or someone might have hurt you. That's a great way to do it, just connecting first. Let's see where we're at together before we move forward with correction, or expressing how we're feeling. That's such a great phrase. I really, really love that.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't know you were English, can't get my words out. I didn't know that you work in an all-girls school. um would you say then, because again we are talking about men and women, the men in your school, I'm going to make a sweeping assumption and assume that you've got more women working in your school than men.
Definitely.
Okay, so the stats are still matching up.
Yep.
So how would you, okay, let me rephrase this question. What value do you think the male teachers in your school add to your school, essentially? What are they bringing? And I ask that because, you know, we've got women essentially taking over the sector. There's lots and lots of women, according to the stats. We know that. And some people would say, well, of course, it's a natural thing, even biologically evolutionary. Women are nurturing, women,
Mm-hmm.
have that maternal instinct. Of course, they're going to be teachers, especially in a girls' school. So, for the men that are in teaching, and in your school specifically, where it is young women, what value do you think they bring? How do they enhance your school?
I'd like to say the males in my school, just like in any sector, any industry or whatever, I feel like they bring a balance. So there's a perspective that I may have that the male teacher may not, and vice versa, naturally.
Yep.
So I feel like there's balance there. And on top of that, for those girls who don't have a positive male role model in their lives, or like a father figure, for them to see a positive male role model, to see a working man, a professional, someone who cares about their education, someone who wants them to do well, who's also rooting for them, I think that is good. I think it's a great way for them to see those positive male role models, so that when they go out in the real world, they know that there are men out there who also want girls and women to do well, who are also supportive. So that's the value that I feel the male teachers bring to the school. They bring a different perspective. They bring a different understanding. They show our girls what it means to be respectful, what it means for a man to be respectful, to be kind, to be a gentleman, and so on. And it's important for our girls to see that, because not everybody comes from like a two-parent household, and not everyone, like I said earlier, has that father figure in their lives that, they're able to experience that. And if they have had that, it may have not always been positive. So having a positive encounter will let them know that not everyone's the same, everyone's different, and at least you've experienced something positive in a safe space, in a school that you go to that is a safe space for you.
Definitely. See, it's interesting because I'm hearing what you're saying about complementarity, like men and women complementing each other in the different perspectives that they both bring, and they can be positive role models, and they can be all these wonderful things for young people, but we still can't ignore the fact that men just aren't entering the profession. I mean, we know there's a crisis of recruitment and retention, so teachers just aren't, we're just not getting more teachers, full stop. But we are also getting of the few teachers we are getting, very few of them are men, should we say. So even though teaching can offer all these wonderful things, why do you think we've got this shortage? Why do you think that men aren't entering the profession? And I did speak to men and ask them, so for our new listeners, please don't think that this is just us, just hypothesizing. We did do a whole show on this with men, so I will go over what they said as well. But just from a woman's perspective, Kemi, why do you think that we don't have men in our schools, or as many as we would like?
Well, to be quite frank, teaching is not like a lucrative kind of. So, like I said, for me, I didn't leave university thinking I want to become a teacher. That was never my plan. And I'm not a male, right? I'm female, and I never thought that. My thinking process back then, coming out of uni with however many thousands of pounds debt that student loans going to start collecting soon, I'm thinking, how can I make as much money as possible? I don't know anyone who goes into teaching to make money.
Yep.
Personally, if they're listening, if they're out there, great. But I don't know anyone who has personally gone into teaching to make money, because that's not where the money is. We can in some cases, people do progress quite quickly in education, depending on the school, depending on the opportunities presented, but it's not the place where you'll be working in like banking or finance, and then or you're getting commission based, or just these different type of roles. So if I'm going to use myself as an example, coming from a working class background, my parents both worked, and they are degree holders, but when they came to the country, due to a lot of racism, they weren't given the opportunities that their white counterparts would have had. So if we're in that kind of situation, I would never expect my brothers, for example, to say, yeah, I'm going to become a teacher. They're thinking, okay, we saw mum and dad have to, although they were well educated, they literally had to start all over again. So now the position where I've come out of uni, I'm going to see what's the best job that I can get that can make me the most amount of money. That's the way I see it. That's my thought process. I could be wrong, of course, as this is my personal opinion, but that's the way I see it. And even now, okay, let me ask you, Tolu. You're a teacher, so obviously you're already in the profession. But the average 21-year-old coming out after a 3-year degree is teaching the most lucrative thing they could do to make money.
Yep.
Like, it's not the type of job that you would want to do to say, yeah, I'm going to make money quickly, progress quickly. But if you look at us teachers who are here, a lot of us, we do it for the love of the children,
Mm.
of the students. We're seeing it as we are empowering and educating the next generation. For those of us who don't have children yet, these are like our children before we have our own.
Yeah.
It's more to it. I promise you, if I wanted to make money, teaching is not the place I'd be. I would have left a long
Absolutely.
time ago. So
Yeah.
it's very clear that those of us who are teachers, we're not here for the love of money. And the holidays are not enough. Every single person that tells me, but you get holidays, don't let me hear that come out of your mouth again. Because there are a lot of teachers who they're doing Saturday sessions, holiday sessions, they're marking, they're planning,
Yeah.
they're having all these different meetings or conferences, whatever they're trying to do to improve themselves as teachers or get more work done. They're using every minute of their day. They're still going into school. So
Mm.
you can't say we get holidays, because those holidays, if we're going to really count it up and take away all the extra time, the hours we do Monday to Friday or during the half term or during the other holidays, it probably still adds up to what the average person gets, whether it's 30 days per year or whatever in terms of annual leave.
Mm.
So
That's true.
yeah, that's my opinion on the whole recruitment retention thing. It's not we're overworked, we're underpaid, which is why teachers are striking, and until the government sees us as, valuable members of the society who contribute to future generations, this is how it's going to be.
Mm. Absolutely. Income and money and finances are a huge part of it. I remember when I spoke to the men on that episode of the show, that was absolutely one thing that resonated with all of them. They said, yep, it's just not financially viable all the time. But they, like you, said it is the value of the job that has kept them there. It's the children, it's the positive relationships, it's the being the role model that has kept them in the role. Because yeah, like you said, it's definitely not the money. Um, and it was interesting because one of them said, he was hoping to, well, when he left uni, he's always thinking, I'll have a family, I want to get married, and all of those kind of things, and ideally he would want to be the breadwinner. So, was teaching going to get him that? Probably not. And he's got all those wonderful things, and he is teaching, so he's made it work, which is great. But yes, finances definitely were a big part of that.
Can I just also add,
Yeah, absolutely.
sorry to cut you off, Tolu, what you said about the whole finances thing. As a woman, I have to even think about when I want to have a child,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like maternity pay is not great.
Nope.
But so if I don't work, I'm not earning as much money.
Mm-hmm.
Nursery fees are ridiculous.
Yep.
Like you said, it's not the most financially viable type of profession where we're making all that money, and cost of living crisis. It's
Mm-hmm.
factors play into why maybe a lot of women are not in senior leadership, because when we now come out of the profession to have children, to take care of our families, and want to come back in, maybe those opportunities have gone. We've missed for some, maybe they've missed that opportunity, or maybe it's also, I've heard some women say like mum guilt. With the workload that we have to do, there are times where I get to work for 7 a.m. and I'm not leaving until 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Or there are times where I'm at home and I'm working till 11 p.m. at night. And I'm doing this now without children. This is not sustainable for my own mental and emotional well-being, let alone for when I now have kids.
Yeah.
So those could also be reasons why some women don't end up going into senior leadership, which is why it's dominated by men. Because 2 weeks paternity in comparison to taking off maybe if some women want to take off up to a year for the benefit of their family. And some women are forced to do that, because if I go back to work after, I don't know, 3 months or 6 months, and I have to pay £300 a week in nursery fees, the money doesn't add up anyway. Most of my salary is going to paying for nursery. I might as well just stay at home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's another reason why you may not see as many women in positions of senior leadership, because of the toll it takes on the family, the financial toll it may take as well. And I think that's one reason why, for me, it was important that I progressed to senior leadership before having children. I know that if I leave, and I come back after maternity or whatever, this is a position I'm coming back into. I'm not
Yeah.
still climbing. I'm now already here. If that
That's such
makes
a
sense.
good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I am currently on maternity leave and it is difficult. It's as in with the finances, it's not it can be very difficult to get by and there is always going to be a sacrifice that needs to be made somewhere. It's either you return to work faster but then you're paying for childcare, like you said. Not for everybody, some people are blessed to have family, or you take the whole year off, but then your career suffers. And even now that I'm at home with baby, I'm still thinking, okay, what are we doing in September? When I go back, what do I want my department to look like? And all these sort of things. So, you never really switch off. Even on maternity leave. And that is a choice that I'm making. No one has said that I have to do anything for next year. My head teacher has been absolutely brilliant even since before I left. So that's a personal choice because I want to be prepared. But it is really difficult. And actually, I didn't consider that in the conversation when thinking about why more men are in school leadership than women. That's a huge part of it. That is a really huge thing. So thank you for bringing that up because I completely overlooked that, even though I am sitting at home with a child. But it is absolutely massive, and I think the only reason.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. I think the only reason it kind of works for me is because my role is very unique. I don't have the pressures of being a normal classroom teacher anymore, so I've made it work for me, thankfully. But there was something that I wanted to dig into a little bit, and I'm going to park the men and women discussion to one side because I've wanted to ask you this for some time, even before I asked you to be a guest, but I just never got around to it. I really wanted to ask about your teaching experience in Dubai. Um, what type of school was it? What was your role there? How was it? I'm so intrigued.
Oh, it was a private British international school. It was, I think there are like levels to it. So there's like a premium plus school, there's a premium school. Mine was a premium, so it was one of the like more expensive fee-paying schools. Working in Dubai was absolutely fantastic. My work-life balance was amazing. All my friends used to say that I actually did not go out there to work. I was just enjoying my life, and I said I definitely was. I don't regret any part of that. Finishing work and it's still bright outside, or going to the beach, or having a nice dinner, or so many in Dubai as well. There's so many like teacher discount deals and all these different things. So teachers are kind of taken care of as well out there.
Mm.
Nice. Whereas here, I think during COVID, all we got is like a Morrison voucher or something. And that's how they take care of teachers here. I don't feel like teachers have the kind of perks that we should have. Um, Working in Dubai was an eye opener for me because I got to work with members of staff from all over the world, and I also got to work with and teach children from different parts of the world that I wouldn't normally teach. And I actually was employed there as a biology and an inclusion teacher. And then 2 months after I started, I got promoted to a Senko. I was already doing the Senko role in London, but when I
Mm.
went out to Dubai, I took a step down. I didn't go out there with any responsibility. It was just to teach, not as a middle leader. But when they saw, in terms of how I was teaching and the fact that I had the Senko qualification, they needed a Senko. So they employed me. I got promoted, which was great. And yeah, it was a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. Working in a private school is demanding because the parents, they're paying. So they expect a lot. They
Mm.
expect a lot for their children. And I don't blame them. But for me, it was about having that work-life balance. And I don't believe I've ever had a work-life balance like that, the way I did over there. And I would definitely recommend for people to explore their options of working abroad because you just never know.
Mm.
You never know where it could take you. You never know what it could do for your family. And if the right opportunity presented itself, I'll definitely do it again
Mm.
because I think it's for me at this stage now. I guess I don't know. When you get into your 30s, your mindset changes a little bit. For me, it's just about my mental and emotional well-being and what's best for my future.
Mm.
Whereas definitely my 20s was about just climbing, and making the money.
Yeah. Wow. Guys, honestly, if I tell you, there would be times 4:30, even 4 o'clock, I'd be marking books and I'd just have a cheeky look at Instagram and I just see Kemi there with her lovely fruity drink on the beach. And this is like
Oh
three
my
o'clock
God.
or something. I think there were some days you didn't even go in because it was Jumad. Like I just watched in
Actually,
awe.
funnily enough, you said that every Friday we finish school at 12 o'clock. So I went straight to the beach. Yep, you're definitely right.
Yeah, right. Honest, I was just watching, thinking, so this is how the other half live. Like this is
Honestly,
really what life is like for some people. It's
it was just
real.
fantastic. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna try and sugarcoat it. I wouldn't even try. Sorry, make it seem like it wasn't that. It really was Tolu. I was living my
Yeah.
best life.
Oh, love it for you. Absolutely love it. In fact, I was surprised you came back, to be honest.
I
I
know,
was
right? A
very
lot of
shocked.
people say that. They're like, "Why did you come back?"
Oh, that's so funny. Well, why did you come back, actually? I'm intrigued now.
So I came back because I got married,
Oh, yes, you
and
did.
my plan
Congrats.
was never. For me, the long distance thing doesn't work. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't personally like it. So I always said that when that time comes, I'm very much happy to come back or for my husband to come there. But I think it was definitely easier for me to come back because obviously all our families here, we already have a home
Mm,
established here. So it was more easier for me to come back and to get a job as an assistant head here than it was in
mm.
Dubai. Another thing about that is seeing black people in senior leadership is very rare in Dubai. So
Right.
we don't have a lot of it here, but in Dubai it's even less. So
Mm.
definitely getting a senior leadership position here was easier than getting one in Dubai for me. So
Yeah.
that was part of my decision for coming home because I could progress as a senior leader and I'm here with my family, I'm here with my husband, and yeah, that's what worked.
Mm. That makes sense. So, when you were looking to go abroad, did you look at different countries or did you always know that you wanted to work in Dubai? What was it that led you there?
It was always Dubai. I was never looking at any other country. No. I've been to Dubai prior to me working there. I had gone on holiday there about 7 times.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay. Right.
I feel, I like to call myself an Emirati. Of course I'm not. But it's like I go there so often and I just
Mm,
enjoy it. I like the weather. I like the fact that I'm always doing something new there. So I purposely looked at Dubai.
okay.
I connected with people who also work there to understand their experiences. It wasn't going to be something that I was just going to do on a whim. It was something that was in the like years. It was years in the making. And actually, to be honest with you, I completed over 300 applications before I got my first interview.
Wow.
And for a lot of people, they're thinking 300. And I had been applying for jobs in Dubai since 2014. And I finally got a job in Dubai 7 years later in 2021. So it wasn't it wasn't an easy road for me.
Mm,
Definitely something that was years in the making. The feedback I would get from interviews, I'll take it on board, do something to show that I had done that, and it will still always come back with something else. They wanted to see something else. So yeah,
wow.
it took a while, but I always wanted to work in Dubai because of the weather, because of
Mm,
that work-life balance. I just wanted to be able to leave work at work and have my own personal time for myself.
absolutely. Wow. That is, I mean, I'm clapping for your resilience because after five
Thank
or
you.
six, I would have been done.
No, it was
Uh,
300 in total when I definitely, because
wow.
I kept count.
My goodness. And I feel like I see people, or I know people that have, gone to teach abroad and they make it seem so easy. Like they just, filled out an application, had their interviews. Oh, yeah, you got the job, off they go. I didn't realize that it can be so difficult to get
Maybe
these
for
jobs.
those people it was because everyone's experience is different. So for some
Well,
people,
that's
maybe
true.
they had exactly what the school was looking for at the time, or maybe the school, the right opportunity presented itself, and I just didn't apply at the right time or something like that. But I just know that it wasn't easy for me. There were times where I think like during lockdown, from about 2019 up until no 2018 to 2020, I just stopped applying. I just gave up because I
Mm,
thought, what's the point? And then I think the last straw for me was when a school, they actually like said they would like to offer me the role, but they just didn't think I'll be the right fit. And
Mm.
when I asked what the right fit was, and then I looked at the whole staff team, I realized there's no one black or anyone of any other color apart from white there. And I thought, okay,
Mm.
maybe that wasn't the right fit. Maybe that's why they felt that way. So
Yeah.
um, I'm glad things happened the way it did though, because maybe I wouldn't have been ready to go out to Dubai. Maybe I needed to build more resilience, more experience, develop my own leadership skills and my own teaching style before I went out there. So yeah, it all happened at the right
Mm.
time.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We actually have a question in from Peter. Thank you for your question, Peter. So he has asked, how hard is it to recruit minority teachers into STEM subjects? Um, because I know your area is science. Um, I actually personally think that STEM is doing well in comparison to other subjects. And I do know that there has been a lot of focus on STEM just because of how quickly our technology is advancing. We need people teaching these subjects. We need the maths teachers, physics, the engineering, all of those kind of things, the science teachers. So I don't know how, I mean, is it difficult to get teachers into STEM subjects? I imagine it was at one point, otherwise there wouldn't have been such a push for it. And lots of incentives for those teachers as well, might I add. Not me being bitter, the music teacher, performing arts in the corner over here. But I don't know, Kemi, what do you think? Is it hard to get minority teachers into STEM subjects?
Oh, definitely. It's definitely hard to get minority teachers into STEM subjects, which is why, like the Lewis Hamilton Foundation Mission 44, they've established getting more black teachers into STEM. They've partnered up with Teach First to do that. I remember
Mm.
working in the pupil referral unit, and a student said to me, "Raw, miss, there's black science teachers out there. Like, you're a black science teacher." I was just like, yeah. Yeah, I am. They're like, I thought you automatically he just went straight into sports. He said, and there's nothing wrong with
Mm.
anything to do with sports. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But he just automatically went into, I just thought, madam, you would be a PE teacher. And I asked him
Yep.
why. And then the student said, that's what they push us into.
Wow.
They push us into sports. And I said, well, I'm a science teacher, and this is what you're going to be learning in my lesson. And we kind of got down to it. And it's quite, I know I know science teachers who are black, black science
Mm.
teachers now and so on. But coming to think of it, even when I was growing up, I didn't really, maybe there was like a couple, but yeah, there weren't a lot. And I just think, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because schools are not looking in the right places. I don't know if presenting itself. I don't know what the reasons are, but I
Mm.
do know there are scientists who are black out there. There are teachers who are black. There are teachers who can teach science subjects and STEM subjects. It's just important that the employers recruit, or they look in the right places, because sometimes the Guardian or TES is not enough. You might need to
Mm.
broaden your
Yep.
horizon a bit and go and really, like, how some recruiters go and headhunt for people. You might have to do
Yes.
that.
That's true. I suppose I find it interesting because culturally, and this is just me speaking for the culture that I am a part of, if you want to go to uni, and this is changing, I do believe a lot of our parents are becoming more understanding. But typically, if you were studying, your parents would want you to be a scientist, a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, those kinds of professions, which are essentially STEM, quote unquote, professions. So I suppose it was a bit surprising to me when I'm hearing that there aren't many minority ethnic teachers because that's kind of what we're pushed to do.
Yeah, but
But then
Tolu,
I think it's
that's
the knowledge, not the profession. So it's like the scientists are there, the doctors are there, the mathematicians are there, they're just not teachers.
you just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. They're just going into, they're in those professions, but they're just not teachers.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I suppose that's it really. Um, but I do think it's good that they are trying to recruit for those roles. I've seen, well, I know when I was studying or about to do my PGCE, they they had bursaries for the different subjects, and I remember just going through the list to see how much bursary you would get depending on the subject. And primary school was like at the bottom of the list. No one cares about primary school teachers. Thanks, government. And I think the highest bursary you could get was just a ridiculous amount of money, but it was physics, I think it was, and then maths. And I just remember sitting there like, why don't we just encourage people into the profession? Never mind what subject right now. Let's just get the teachers in. But yeah, Peter, I hope that's answered your question. There's still a way to go, as we know. There's teachers are leaving the profession at a very rapid rate. Um, so yeah, hopefully that can change, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Did you attend any of the strikes, Kemi?
Yeah, I did. I've actually attended quite a few, and
Mm,
just it's what is just really annoying me is the fact that the government aren't listening.
mm,
And it's so funny how, during COVID, during lockdown, let's clap for nurses, teachers, they're going into schools and they're teaching the children and blah 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 blah. But now it's like, okay, well, pay us what we're worth then. Let's make sure that our salaries match with inflation. That's all we want, at least. And all of a
mm.
sudden, now we're the villains.
Yeah,
It just doesn't make
absolutely.
sense.
I agree. It is very disheartening and discouraging. And yes, I feel like no one really understands what teachers do unless you live with one, you are one, or you're married to one. And yeah, I think it's just one of those things where everyone is an expert on teaching, but no one wants to do it. Everyone's an expert on teaching, but no one can actually explain how much work we do or understand it. So yeah, it's not the most pleasant thing to be hearing about every day. It's like, oh yeah, teachers, they get all these holidays and they get this and they get that. I'm like, well, if it's so easy, you do it then.
Exactly.
And I think that's just where we're all at as a job sector at the moment. I think we're all just a bit fed up. So yeah, there is that. So I'm gonna park that to one side because this isn't meant to be a negative Nancy kind of show. I do want to ask because we've spoken about challenges, we've spoken about, men and women and all of those things. But I would like to know what it is you really enjoy about your role in leadership. Maybe is there a particular moment you can think of when you thought, yeah, I'm absolutely doing what I'm meant to be doing? I know you mentioned the year 11 girls, but what do you love about your role? Why should people aspire to senior leadership, especially women?
For me, I love making a difference. And I know that could sound like so cliche because we all make difference. We all make a difference every day as teachers. But it's for me it's that difference that you're making in the life of a child. Like for me as a Senko especially, there are students with special educational needs that maybe don't have or don't get the right access to the curriculum that they should be getting. And just making those changes, ensuring that they have what they need to be successful academically while they're with you in school, that makes me happy. And also for me as a leader, um, I not just a leader in the school, but also as the founder of the Young Black Teachers Network, ensuring that the community of teachers that I know they have the right support. And that's
Mm,
important to me. That makes me happy because I know when I first started teaching, I did not feel and I didn't actually have that kind of support. So this is what brings me joy, supporting other teachers and ensuring that children, students have what they need to be successful academically so they can go out in the world and do their best. Because some of these children that we're teaching now might end up teaching our own children that we have.
mm,
I need to make sure that I'm setting the right foundations. I can't have
Wow.
it coming back to haunt me. So I need to, you just want to make that, you definitely want to make a difference in the lives of children. And sometimes I think about, those children who, when they come to school, it's their safe haven and they're happy, but when they go home, it's not what it should be.
Mm.
I think about them. Like if 6 hours a day is what's going to bring you joy, I want to be part of that joy.
Mm.
I don't want to be adding to whatever stress you're dealing with. Like we have, you have some students who could be young carers, so they have to play that adult role at home, and they can't be children at home. So they come to school, and this is where they can be a child.
Mm.
You want them to feel and to know that you're an advocate. You're an advocate for them. I don't know if you've heard of a woman called Rita Pearson.
No, I haven't.
She's passed away now, but she did a TED talk and she said every child needs a champion.
Mm.
And that would always resonate with me.
Wow.
So I think that's why I enjoy doing what I do. That's why I'm passionate about education. I can't promise that I'm always going to be a teacher. I've done 10 years already. I may not do another 10 years. But every child does need a champion. And I would like to think that when I have my own children and they're in school, there's going to be someone in that school that will be a champion for them too.
Wow. Yeah, that's so key. And I think it is about, it's partially about legacy as well. Because I know being a primary school teacher, well, most of us have gone to primary schools. You typically tend to only have one teacher per year. So it's like you'll only ever have 1 year 2 teacher, 1 year 5 teacher, 1 year 6 teacher, if all goes well during that school year. And it's almost like, how do you want to be remembered? And even though secondary school, you've got lots of different teachers, if you're a great teacher, that your students will remember you. There's no way. And in this whole technological age that we're living in, and our young people, they will find you on social media. They will. And
Yep,
they'll
they
bump
do.
into you in the street and they'll say, "Oh, miss, you taught me science, you taught me music, you taught me whatever." They just don't forget. So I'm completely with you. Legacy is so important in that respect. And yeah, you don't want to be the teacher that's known as whatever names these young people have for for teachers they don't like.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's so many, but I'm not down with the kids anymore. So God only knows. I've been out of school for a good few months now, so I'm sure the slang has evolved
I'm still
in my
learning.
short time away.
I'm still learning.
Honestly. What was I going to ask? Yes. What advice would you give to anybody, even though we are focusing on women, but I will say just anyone in general? What advice would you give to anybody that is aspiring to leadership, whether that be middle leadership, head of year, head of department, pastoral, whatever it might be? What would you say to those people, either about how to position themselves for that role or being in it and maintaining it and doing well in it? What would you say to encourage those people?
My advice would be to network. So if you see someone that's in that role, speak to them, get to know them, get to find out what their day in and day out is like. My advice would be to get a job description of that role you want, whether it's pastoral, whether it's head of a subject or whatever it is. Get a job description of that role, that specific role that you want. And if you can do about 50% of the things on there, apply. Because there are mediocre people who can only do about half of the things on those job descriptions and they get the job. So why can't you?
Say it louder. Sorry, Kemi, I just have to jump in there because you're so right. Me personally, and I don't know if anyone else can relate, but sometimes imposter syndrome is real, right? I'm doing my job and I'm thinking, I am not qualified to be doing this thing. And then I see people who are ahead of me, earning more than me, but have less qualifications than me, less years than me. And I'm thinking, wait, hold on. Just wait a minute.
Yep.
A minute. So yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, please continue. But
No,
that
that's
point
fine.
right there hit me.
No, I totally understand it. That's why I'm saying it, because I wish I knew this earlier. Maybe I would have been a senior leader a lot earlier than I am now. But it's the networking. So you know what the day in and day out of that role looks like, firsthand, you're getting to know. It's getting that job description and you're going through it with a fine tooth comb. You're doing like a self audit of what are you currently doing that is in line with that, and what do you need to do to make sure it's in line with that. It's also, for me, there are going to be times where you have to do things for free. I'm not saying you should always work for free, of course not. But there were times that I did things before I even got into middle leadership for free to show and to prove that I can do this. It was just me putting myself out there, putting myself forward to show that, I can do this. I'm skilled, I'm qualified. And I did a couple of things for like a year before I started getting paid for it. But then it's always making sure you are getting paid as well for it. I think it's just finding that balance of what are you willing to do for free to show, whether it's for a fixed term, like 1 term or 2, to show that, you're ready for that next stage, or now you're ready to get paid for it. And also do your research. I think a lot of people are very much happy to be comfortable and stay in the school because they've just been there for so long. Why leave now? But I don't. For me personally, I'm going to go where I can progress. I'm going to go where I can make a difference. The longest I've stayed in a school is 4 years. The shortest amount of time I've stayed in a school is 1 year. And it hasn't had a negative impact on my career so far. I've been able to progress, and even though employers can obviously see that on my CV, that I have moved to different schools. But it's what I've learned from those schools, what I've taken from those schools. Don't be afraid to move. Like, what's the worst that could happen if you move? You don't like it, okay, you go somewhere else. But at least you've tried. And I think that's the most important thing. Do your research. If you're going for a role, and this is something that I've done through YBTN, I have done an event on like negotiating your pay. Do your research. I never, ever take the first offer. Ever. And I haven't done that since the first school that I worked in, where myself and another person, we did our teacher training at the same time. We both passed the same way. Everything was the same. But they started him on M5 and they started me on an M2. And
Wow.
he said to me, categorically, I'm white and I'm a man. This is what the person said to me who got the M5. And I said, wow, he just said, I'll be honest with you. I'm white and I'm a man. So they're going to start me on a higher salary. I said, great. Ever since then, I said, this is not happening again. I'm always going to negotiate. And that's just what I do. You have to be bold. You have to know that once you've been offered a role, this is what you're going to ask for. And you've done your research. So number 1, you know the role you want specifically. You've got the job description. Highlight what you can do already. Highlight, what you're willing to work on. Number 2, network with people who are in those roles already so you can really learn what the role is about. Number 3, if you can do 50% of those things on that job description, start applying. And number 4, research the salary and negotiate when you're offered that role. Negotiate that salary. Don't settle if you believe that you deserve more and you can bring more to the table.
Oh, so just great nuggets there. I think the salary thing is so interesting though, because I feel like as a society, I was going to say as a nation, but as a society, if we'll go with that, generally a lot of people don't like to talk money. They don't like to talk salary. They don't like to talk finances. And it is for exactly the reason, the example that you gave, that we need to be talking about it. Because you could be getting shortchanged and have no idea. I've heard of situations just like yours, people starting the same time, or maybe someone with less experience joining after, and they're getting more than you that's been there 10 years and, progressing. So it needs to be talked about, because if you don't say anything, how are you ever going to find out? So I completely agree with that. And I do also think what you said about working for free, I have noticed that, I guess the generation just under us, not to make us sound old, guys, we're not old, we promise. Like, we're valuing our youth, please. But the generation coming up under us, they are very quite cutthroat in pay me for my time. There's, and of course this is a sweeping generalization. I do acknowledge that there is a culture of I don't have to work for free. Like, that's my time. I should be paid what I'm worth. And absolutely, no one is disputing that. But I do think there is still a place for, for learning and not giving up your time for free per se. But if it's going to add value to you in the long run, just forget about money temporarily. So you can get the skills you need, get the contacts you need to help you move ahead. So you can make that money back later, essentially. So I think there's some real wisdom in what you said there. So I am very grateful for sharing that and summarizing it very nicely in true teacher fashion.
You're welcome.
So lastly, just to wind down the show, normally the show is on a Wednesday, so it's like Wellbeing Wednesday, but it's a Monday. It's fine. But yeah, just wanted to close the show by talking about well-being because as we've covered in the shows, leadership is demanding. Teaching is demanding, whatever level you're at. Do you, I feel like I know what you're going to say because you're a seasoned teacher. You've been doing this for long enough. But are you ever able to really shut off and just forget about teaching and focus on you and your life and your personal circumstances? How good are you at doing that?
I am not good with that. I remember maybe up until 2019. Up until 2019, I was very good with that. I was just, once work is done, it's done. I'm going home, spending my own time. My time is my time.
Yeah.
However, as I progressed into middle leadership and doing the Senko, like studying at the same time as running YBTN and working full time, my work-life balance, let me not lie to you and let me not lie to anyone who's listening, it hasn't been great. Like I said, I can start work at 7 in the morning and finish at 8 p.m. I've got like an hour or two before it's time to go to bed. So I don't fully switch off. For example, I went away to Malta for the weekend, so I did switch off in that sense. But while I was there, I was even making notes on what needs to be done and remembering something else and emailing, so I wasn't completely switched off. It's there's always something on my mind, and it's not always good, but I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out. Like I said, this year, this is my first senior leadership role, so I'm doing a lot of learning. Maybe next year better for me in terms of managing my time.
That's a fair point, actually. I do think the first year in any role or the first few months, maybe in other sectors, it can be quite demanding because you do want to do well. You want to do your best. You want to be on top form, make sure you know what's going on. You're on top of your work. And it can absolutely, there just aren't enough hours in the day to do what we need to do as teachers and educators. So that does make sense for the situation that you're in. And hopefully you will get to a point where it's not so draining and it's not taking up so much of your time outside of work. But you did mention that it was up to 20. So basically before you became any kind of leader. So in those moments, how did you unwind? How did you detach from work? What did you do for your own peace of mind?
I love reading. Reading is like an escape for me. I get to escape reality and just get lost in a book. So reading, I like writing short stories, and I love traveling. Anyone who knows me knows that I may not go out and, be spending money on a lot of like restaurants and clothes and shoes and stuff like that. But for me, if I can get on that plane, I'm getting on it. So that's another way that I try to unwind, is just traveling when I can. Of course, when I can afford to do so. Yeah, it's just traveling and reading are my main things. I love reading.
Is there a book that you are currently reading at the moment?
So I just finished reading Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. And I'm currently reading The Black Kids by Christina Reed. So I try to read a lot. I read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of stories by African authors or African American authors. So because when I was growing up, the library books, I just never saw anyone who was like a black author. So as I've gotten older, I'm trying to read more.
Yes, I can definitely relate. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the fiction books I've been reading recently have been by Black authors as well, especially
What are you
Black
currently
African
reading?
authors. I am currently reading, oh gosh, what's it called? 101 essays to help you think differently, or something like that. But
Okay.
it's just a collection of short essays um that just approach different things in life, really. And one of the things that stuck out to me recently actually was the author said, you're not achieving, well, I'm paraphrasing here, but she basically said, you're not achieving everything you want to in life because you spend too much time thinking about it and not enough time
Ooh.
doing it. And I just had to put the book down because why are you shouting?
Literally. Yeah, that's that. I feel personally attacked right now.
You know? Do you know what I mean? I just read that and I actually just had to just stop and put the book down because, yeah, I just thought she was dragging me, quite frankly. But yeah, reading, it's been such a joy to be able to read just over this maternity time because apart from reading on the tube and reading for work, um, yeah, I don't really get to. Like, I'll read the book that the children are reading because I have to teach it the next day.
Mhm.
But aside from that, I just really found it difficult to find the time. So it's now so great to be able to have that time back to just read and enjoy the love of reading. So I'm definitely with you on that. The traveling one, I'll catch up to you one day. It's not my time right now, but one day.
No, no, like honestly, it's just even staycations, in England. It's just nice to move away from your usual scenery and to see something else.
Definitely. Though I think my only issue with staycations at the moment is by the time you've worked out the prices, it's probably cheaper to go abroad anyway.
Yeah, that's another thing.
But hey ho, that is life in the UK.
Mhm.
Right. I do have one last question for you, which I was meant to ask at the start, but I
Okay.
forgot. And I ask everyone this as Teacher Talk Radio's resident music teacher. What was your favorite song to sing when you were a student in school? What was your favorite school song?
Oh my gosh, so I went to my first primary school was St. John the Baptist in Hackney, and we used to sing like he's got the whole world in his hands, this little light of mine. Those kind of Christian
Yes.
songs.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah, those are my kind of songs, man. In the assembly hall, we're all singing together.
Oh, do you know what? I can't wait for that. It's so funny because I forgot that you went there because that's where I teach now.
Wait, what?
And yeah, I teach in the school that you went to.
St. John the Baptist in Hackney
Yeah,
in
that is,
Hoxton?
yeah, that is where I am.
No
Or
way.
when I'm not on maternity leave. But yes,
Oh,
yeah, I know.
I'm so
Look at
shocked right now.
that. But it's funny you said that, like singing in the hall. One, the hall hasn't changed. It probably looks exactly the same.
Oh, I need to
But
come back and visit.
oh, please do. Okay, we'll sort this off. So sort this off air. But because I joined during lockdown, or just was it during or 2020 anyway, all the dates from this pandemic time have just all scrambled in my brain. But I am yet to have an in-person whole school assembly with them because it was all on Zoom
Oh, okay.
because of the school bubbles and things. And you can imagine singing on Zoom is just the strangest thing because I couldn't hear the children. I was in a room by myself singing over Zoom. It was very Dora the Explorer. Like I would sing a line and then just sit in silence, hoping and praying in faith that they were singing in their classrooms and just have to encourage them. Well done,
Oh,
children, you're
wow.
doing so well. And I don't know if any of them actually opened their mouths. But yes, I am hoping and praying that when I get back in September, we can have a whole class, a whole school even assembly. And yes, thank you for sharing your favorite songs. He's got the whole world in his hands, This Little Light of Mine. Absolutely. Just absolute classics. So yes, it really is the Christian songs that hit that just stick in your brain. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it's because so many of us went to Church of England schools, but when I ask people what their favorite song is, it usually is one of those hymn style songs. So yeah, they just seem to be stuck in our brains.
Definitely. But I wouldn't
Oh,
change it for the world.
honestly, they are just absolutely brilliant. Shine, Jesus, shine. I will teach every
Oh my
class.
gosh.
That's that song till
Don't
till
even get me
I
started.
retire.
Don't get me started.
Oh, well, we have come to the end, Kemi. It's been such a joy spending the evening with you. Thank you so much for being our guest
Thank
this
you for having
evening.
me.
And to all our lovely listeners, thank you for tuning in. I will be back to Wednesdays in the next 2 weeks, I believe. So do look out for all the promo and the tweets that will be coming out over the next week or two. Thank you again for joining us and have a lovely rest of the week. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Bye.